Hey everyone, Carl here with Littleroot Lessons, bringing you a deep dive featuring Arcanine this week. Arcanine has started to see a little bit more play as a lot of the fake out abusers, I would call them, have kind of fallen out of favor, which we'll get into that when we start talking more about Arcanine. But before we get to all that, make sure to do all the YouTube stuff for us. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications for when new videos go live, and leave a comment down below who you want to see me cover and talk about next week. So, Arcanine. What can we talk about with Arcanine here? There's a lot that Arcanine's done over the past 2 years of Sword and Shield. As an intimidating fire type, it offers a decent amount of utility and damage all in one Pokemon. The big question always is why Arcanine over Incineroar. Incineroar does a lot of the same things that Arcanine does, with a little bit better bulk and some better utility, I would say, or better options for utility. We have things like Parting Shot on Incineroar and Fake Out, whereas Arcanine doesn't get that stuff. But Arcanine still has a couple tricks up its sleeves to where it can probably be at least on par in certain teams with Incineroar. And has access to things that Incineroar can't always use. So, before Incineroar's interaction in Sword and Shield in Series 3, and while Incineroar was gone in Series 6, Arcanine was the premier Intimidator. We would see Arcanine, Gyarados, and Hitmontop in early formats for Sword and Shield in Series 1 and 2, but then as soon as we got Incineroar, everything kind of started to revolve around it. We saw Arcanine about as often as you would expect to see a second fire-type Intimidator when Incineroar is running around. But between its decent bulk and its very good speed, Arcanine was about as different as everyone's fingerprints. No two sets were ever the same. You couldn't ever really super-duper prepare for an Arcanine because you never knew what it was actually carrying. Arcanine has a bevy of different options. It can be physical, it can be special, it can be all support. I remember my Arcanine I ran in Collinsville way back when, before COVID and all that stuff was a thing. My Arcanine was Burn Up, Will-O-Wisp, Snarl, and Protect. And I would use Burn Up in the face of overwhelming water or rock type moves because my Arcanine was very bulky to begin with. I would remove my fire typing so I wouldn't have any actual weaknesses. Granted, I'd get hit by everything, but I could take those hits after spamming Snarl or cycling Intimidates over and over. Common partners for Arcanine tend to be the ones that tend to be the ones that punish Fake Out is the best way to put it. Psychic Terrain is a very common terrain alongside Arcanine because it just makes Incineroar's Fake Out null and void. Same kind of thing with Serena. You'll see Serena Arcanine sometimes. Other things that Arcanine are things that Psychic Terrain, like Calyrex Shadow. Whimsicott also helps Arcanine a ton. Having access to Sunny Day means that your Arcanine can do a little bit more damage. Tailwind helps your Arcanine outspeed things, stuff like that. And then, for some reason, Dracovish popped up as the number 5 or 6 according to Pikalytics, which I haven't seen Dracovish all that much in Series 10, but if there's someone out there doing it, cool, more power to them. When we look at the metagame breakdown, though, we see that Snarl, Protect, Will-O-Wisp, and Flare Blitz are the top 4 moves, and there's a whole slew of moves underneath them here. If you don't want to play physical, you can play special with Flamethrower or Heatwave. If you want to be an all-offensive Arcanine, you have access to things like Close Combat, Wild Charge. If you want to be a more supportive one, you have access to things like Roar and Morning Sun. Burn Up, again, is one of the moves that I played a ton of in Collinsville, and it caught a lot of people off guard. It was very powerful, and I enjoyed it a lot. Looking at the items, though, the items don't vary as much. A lot of Arcanine don't have the best bulk, so you try to supplement that with things like Citrus Berry or Assault Vest. There's also offensive Arcanine with Life Orb, support-oriented sets with Aguav Berry or Safety Goggles. Rocky Helmet's a cool one, I feel like. Rocky Helmet lets you kind of switch into on a Surging Strikes from an Urshifu, and you get to put it at half HP after intimidating it. So then it's a little bit weaker later on, and so far and so forth. When you're building with Arcanine, remember to be they're very flexible. this tends to lead to very varying degrees of Arcanines, as we call it. It's very spectrum based. It's like, do you want offensive Arcanine, do you want supportive Arcanine, or do you want to be somewhere in between? Unlike Incineroar, where it usually has to run Fake Out and Parting Shot, Arcanine doesn't have to do that stuff, so it gets access to some more offensive tools or even supportive tools than Incineroar normally would. However, Arcanine does ensure that you need to have a few things to make it work. Mainly, you just want to ensure that your Arcanine is at least equivalent to your opponent's Incineroar. If their opponent's Incineroar just gets to do its Fake Out thing and Parting Shot all the time, then you're just playing with what essentially is a worse Incineroar on your end. If you can negate the Fake Out and make Parting Shot kind of useless, your Arcanine will definitely outpace an opposing Incineroar. Looking at movesets for Arcanine, Arcanine looks to abuse its fairly good speed stat. So you see a lot of these sets are plus nature and fairly invested in speed. Opposite of that, Incineroar looks to be more bulky and lower speed because its base speed is just lower. Beyond that, each Arcanine looks to do something a little bit different. These three here are some of my favorites that I've come up with or found. The first one seems fairly standard. It's a Citrus Berry set with good bulk investment, a little bit of special attack, and a ton of speed. You get to Will-O-Wisp things, Snarl things, like Flamethrower, so you're not got by Wide Yard all the time, and then you just have Protect because you're not the bulkiest thing on the planet. This Assault Vest Arcanine is very offensive forward. Jolly nature with Flare Blitz, Extreme Speed, Snarl, and Close Combat. You can fight opposing Incineroars this way. You're unfortunately not immune to Intimidate. But you do still have Extreme Speed to pick up KOs, Flare Blitz for stabs, Snarl to kind of do your Arcanine thing still. So this set's pretty cool too. And then the last set is the Rocky Helmet set that I mentioned earlier. It's kind of bulky. Definitely looks to get some good damage off with Heat Wave if you can. We also are carrying Roar to send and cycle out an opposing threat or a setup threat like Xerneas or anything like that. So like I said, all these three sets are very different and they all vary wildly. So you can build your Arcanine pretty much however you want, as long as your EVs and your moves line up right. Arcanine doesn't quite have the same bulk as Incineroar, so when you're looking to beat it up, any attacks you put on it will put you at an advantage. As we saw in the showdown, Arcanine doesn't take super effective hits very well. Water, ground, and rock are the big ones, and you likely already have coverage for it on your team because Incineroar is super duper popular. Rapid Strike Urshifu is the best answer, in my opinion, to our opposing Arcanine, since you ignore the stat drop with Intimidate with using Surging Strikes, and you're just going to hit it super effectively anyway. Outside of that, things like Kyogre, Groudon all do really well into opposing Arcanine. Things to probably avoid are Pokemon like Calyrex Shadow, as Tailwind plus Snarl from Arcanine could probably mess you up pretty quickly if you're not careful. So to wrap up on Arcanine, when it comes to Intimidate users, Incineroar has pretty much cornered the lion's share of the market, pun intended there, but Arcanine has proven to be just as more useful, or if not better, in certain situations. If your team can't utilize Fake Out, or you just need a decently bulky fire type, or maybe you just don't want to use Incineroar, Arcanine's probably the Pokemon for you. This Pokemon is super duper popular. It's a shame that Incineroar has been pushed out of the format, and I think Arcanine still has plenty of room to grow as Series 10 develops. And with that being said, I want to thank you all for hanging out and listening to me rant about Arcanine today. Make sure to check us out on Twitter. All of our handles are here on screen. Check out the Discord link down in the description below. And remember to do all the fun YouTube stuff. Subscribe, comment, blah, 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 blah. You hear me ramble about it every day. And with that being said, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're at in the world, and we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.